Well, good evening, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona. And as always, we're delighted to welcome Kathy Reichs onto our little program here. And she's going to be discussing the brand new book, Evil Bones, which Barbara is holding. And for those of you waiting for the signed copies, they should be arriving any moment now. And
No, actually, they ship today, so they won't be here
oh,
till next week.
next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Did it take that long?
It this time of year from Charlotte all the way to Phoenix is probably 6 days UPS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
well, we'll have them soon. And if you'd like to
Yes.
order one, I'll go ahead and put a link in the comments field if you'd like to snatch one of those up before they disappear. And if you have questions for Kathy, go ahead and type them in, and Barbara will bring me on screen towards the end of the hour. And I would be happy to ask any of your questions. So, Barbara, over to you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Right. So, Kathy, thank you. I mean, Kathy has signed all of her books for us. Gosh, it's been a really long career. When did you write your first book? I was going to
I
look.
started Deja Dead. I started it in 94 and it came out in 97.
Right.
And
So it's been a long time, and
yeah,
I really, we all appreciate the fact that even in the midst of your busy life, and you take the trouble to actually sign books for us. But my other question is, before we talk about the book, how was the cruise? I mean, I've reminded people that authors have lives and they don't always coincide with publication date.
the cruise. I do a lot of cruises. Give a couple of lectures and they give me a cruise. So that seems like a pretty good deal to me. So the last one was in the Caribbean and it was fine. It was lovely.
I'm so glad. Yeah, no, that's become an interesting thing to have lectures as part of the cruise
Yes.
experience. I'm sure people are fascinated with yours. We had an excellent one in Japan in October that really talked about North Korea a lot because he'd been there. He's one of the few people I know.
Okay.
And so that really enriched our experience. And you wrote an excellent book. Was it the last one or two where you were in the Caribbean? Um,
I think that was the Bone Hacker, was
yeah,
it?
I think
Which
so.
is in the Turks and Caicos Islands,
Yes, that's the one.
which is one of probably my favorite place in the Caribbean are the
It
Turks
is.
and Caicos. Yeah, I really like those islands. They're a little bit off the beaten path and they're a little quieter. They're not, as razzle dazzle as some other places. And that's what I like.
I really like the fact that in that book you revealed the possibility that a car can be hacked. I thought it was a really amazing murder weapon,
Okay.
using,
Who
yeah,
knew?
I know. Well, I think we should know. Actually, I do. I mean, we have at least two auto car services here in Phoenix. Waymo did a experimental run here, and I think Tesla has just gotten approval, and there's something else. And people have really mixed reactions, to riding in one. But so far as I know, nobody's actually hacked one.
You
Um,
mean the driverless cars?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think one of the fun parts of reading crime fiction is how, weapons evolve along with,
We
society changes and all the rest of it.
and
But
that's a challenge is to keep coming up with new and creative ways to murder people. So
absolutely. So when I got to the end of Evil Bones, you have an acknowledgement, and I wanted to reveal this. You said you call it evil bones, and the concept of evil is an important driver for the story. And you said your interest in the concept of evil came from reading The Anatomy of Evil by Michael H. Stone, MD. Um, so there's a lot of psychology in this book and what's going on with it. How did you come across that book?
I think I wanted to do something about evil. So what do? I Googled it and books came up and I ordered a whole slew of them. And some of them I found useful and some of them I found were not very useful, but that particular one was useful.
Right. So I it's sort of a trope in crime fiction that you never kill a dog. But I know, but,
Well,
but generally that's when the dog is like a character in the book. But so I thought you've always been a brave writer, I think, that when we have somebody who is who is killing pets or killing animals as part of the chain of evil that you're writing about. I thought it was brave of you to actually do a dog.
Well, yeah, what can I say? We wanted truly something that was evil, and people get very upset about animal cruelty,
Yeah.
killing animals. Yeah, so
It's interesting. I have fallen into this sort of Instagram trap of dog shelters or animal shelters, but principally dog shelters. And so I've given a lot of money to
yes,
them, but there's always that question for me is this video showing the dog's AI or is it real? And
I know.
is this same thing? So, you have to step back and verify that the shelter is real. But I'm horrified at the cruelty that often comes up in these things, the way people treat not just dogs, but other animals. And I always wonder what is it that would drive people to do that kind of thing?
Exactly, exactly. Same thing with children. What drives anyone to prey on the vulnerable, the defenseless children and animals?
Yeah. Do you think it's a psychopathology more tilted towards men, or certainly women are capable of it as well?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know what the statistics are on that. Violence in general, I think, is much more prevalent with men than it is physical violence than it is with women. So I suppose there's more of it directed towards animals as well as humans.
Yeah,
But
well, I thought about that while reading the book. It's and actually just before we talked to an author who's written a book um, where poison is the weapon of choice, and for ages poison has been sort of assigned to women, as a murder weapon because women are not as strong, maybe not as um, violence prone, whatever. Um, and I'd like to think that poison's an equal
killer.
opportunity weapon. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So we're in Charlotte again.
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. Winter is here. It's like 50 degrees out there or something. It's chilly.
but the
My
book
dog
is,
did not want to go out tonight.
I really enjoyed the fact that Tempe complains so bitterly about the heat in this book because it's summer. And at some point you say it's 83 degrees. And I think in Phoenix, 83 degrees is a balmy day. And the
True.
humidity is a huge part of that. I grew up in Chicago where I can remember it'd be 90 degrees and raining. And I've never been that hot in Phoenix.
Yeah, well, what can I say? I don't find that terribly hot here in the Carolinas. If you're in the 80s, we're having a cool break in the summer. But in Montreal, up there, if it gets into the 80s, they think that's just a heat wave.
Very true. So, we've always gone back and forth in the books between Tempe's role in Montreal and Tempe's role in Charlotte. So this book, I mean, not only you in Charlotte, but this book takes place in Charlotte. And I'm trying, do you feel like you bringing more of Tempe's family and loved ones into the stories than way back at the beginning?
Yes, probably more than way back at the beginning, although I think her sister Harry appears in the second book, second or third book for sure. So some of the family appeared very early in the series, and then somewhere along the way, her mother is in one of the books.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we give it a rest for a while, and yeah, so they're all with the possibility that this is a wrap up book, So I wanted to bring all those characters in.
I hate you're saying that. Do you think?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So
Okay, well, I'm going to hope for the best because
okay.
one of the things about aging, which I certainly have, is that there's the possibility 36 years into doing this of losing authors. Sometimes, they die, but sometimes they stop writing for one reason or another. And
You
a
do not look a
loss.
day older from the day I met you, which was what, 1997, 98,
Yeah,
somewhere
it
back.
was
Yeah.
right. No, you didn't come to the store with Deja Dead, but you came to the store for years. I remember we had a rum cake party for one of your anniversary books. I can't remember which
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
So, we miss seeing you, but travel is more difficult. So I'm glad that we at least have Zoom. It came along just at the right moment as a better way of doing this. Um, that was the only positive that I can think of from COVID is that
Oh,
we
that's
actually got Zoom.
yeah. Oh, the other positive for me was we chose to COVID in at my beach house. So I was trapped there for I don't how long was it? Months, right? Like 4 months or something with
Yeah.
both of my daughters and four of my grandkids. So I thought it was great.
Well, we had a fairly light experience with it here in Phoenix because we have a lot of land and we have single family housing. And
Mhm.
because we have a small staff, we didn't have to close. We just, closed the store to customers, but we otherwise functioned as we always did. And it was rather restful in lots of ways, but it was so horrible for other people. I always
I know.
hesitate to say that, we are. But anyway, Katie, Tempe's daughter, is a big part of this book. But you've also developed Ryan. I mean, he didn't start out as a love interest, and yet, that's been another factor in the series that I've really enjoyed.
He started out, I think, right from the get-go, wasn't there will they, won't they kind of chemistry between them.
Maybe, yeah,
Not so much maybe in the first book. Was he even in the first book? No, because the first book was set in Montreal.
right.
So, but from his appearance in the series, there was always that chemistry, I think.
And Tempe's ex has kind of evolved as well. Or maybe he was always that guy, but we see more of him. We see a little bit of him in this book. And yeah, so her relationships have become, what's the word I want? Friendlier, more stable?
Okay. Yeah. She still is at odds with some characters, Slidell, and he's not in this book, but in other books, and Slidell, skinny Slidell.
Yeah,
I love writing dialogue for Slidell. He's my favorite character to write dialogue for.
I can certainly see that. And he's a character that you know, you have to accept with all his flaws.
And
Um,
she does.
yes, she does. No, she does. But you, the reader, need to also,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's certainly not, the sort of gorgeous detective,
He is not. He's not
uh,
someone you want to spend Saturday evening with, but
no. Now, he reminds me a little bit of Vera, the Anne Cleves character. She would be ghastly to have in your life, but she's really terrific as a sleuth. And
okay.
I don't think you have to make your characters likable. You just have to make them effective.
Exactly. And believable.
Yeah. So, the crux of this book then is that there are animal deaths, mutilations culminating in the dog, where we come in. And then the question is this escalation going to spill over into humans? It's bad enough as it is. Are there actual crimes? I mean, if you find a decapitated squirrel, is that a crime? Would Tempe and the police department investigate it?
I don't think so. And that's one of the things that really galls her is yeah, you can do things to animals. I mean, I'm sure there are laws that protect animals against blatant abuse and torture and that kind of thing. But if you want to take your dog out and shoot him, I don't think the law prevents that.
No, sadly. No, but the real question is, will the guy, because it seems to be escalating, the animals are getting bigger, will it become a human? And you bring in Tempe's longtime friend, who's a psychologist, to talk about all this. So is that in part predicated on your reading of these various books about evil?
Partly and mainly it was predicated on each of the books. I wanted to bring in a different forensic science.
Right.
And so forensic veterinary medicine figures into this one, and the psychology of that figures into this one. So it's just bringing in a new arena and entering a new world, as we would call it in the writer's room at Bones, bringing in new characters and a new arena of detail activities.
Right. Well, she does then Tempe runs down an actual veterinarian who's been in crisis
Right.
to help her with this. So yeah, I mean, it does take you into a different world, which I
And
found.
I wasn't even sure there was such a thing as forensic veterinary
Yeah.
medicine. So I Googled it, and sure enough, and I found the names of some practitioners and contacted them, and they were very helpful.
So forensic veterinary medicine, what does it actually do?
It has to do with anything that would, well, forensic means anything with a legal connotation, anything that might end up in court. So forensic anthropology, for example, is physical anthropology, but a specialty area within that of things that might end up in court. And therefore, we're people that work with coroners, medical examiners, law enforcement.
So why would a case involving an animal end up in court?
Oh, I knew you'd ask me that. I can't think of an example of one. I mean, if I steal your horse and,
Yeah.
steal your, then that's an animal focused case. It's the theft of an animal. So that could be one reason.
Okay. Well, that's really property theft. Yeah.
Right. Probably wouldn't need you might need a specialist in forensic veterinary medicine to say, you say it's not your horse. And I say it is your horse, to I don't know, whatever you do with a horse, take DNA and establish the identity of the horse.
Wow, that's so Western, it's why animals got branded so that, people could claim
Okay, let's
ownership.
make it not a horse, make it a goat.
Okay, there we go. Or a
Make it a
dog.
hamster.
Well, you bring in the chip thing with the dog, and we have 3 dogs, and they're all chipped. And I think that to be honest, I never really thought about how the chip worked. So I appreciated your explanation of,
Well,
where
again, I didn't know how it worked, and so I think I talked to a forensic to a veterinarian,
yeah.
find out how exactly how it worked.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to try to locate a lost pet because it's such a tragedy for so many people and the pet when they get lost. So the chip is great. Anyway, yeah, property theft. I'm trying to think of actually killing an animal. It still would probably be property theft in a way. I mean, is murder,
Well,
is murder limited just to humans?
I don't know what the law is pertaining to if you just go out in your backyard and shoot across the fence and kill your neighbor's dog. You haven't stolen the dog or kidnapped the dog, but you've killed the dog.
Yeah, but you've destroyed property.
It's probably
Um,
considered property. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I should have looked it up before we
Yeah.
before we have this conversation. I'm just speculating. It's hard to suppress the lawyer in me. It just comes out every once
There
in
you
a
go.
while and see. Right. So again, I'm not going to introduce any spoilers, but I kind of really liked your choice of villain in the book.
Okay.
I thought that was rather satisfying. I just had a very difficult discussion with a customer who I love this. You know how precarious publishing is, right? And, authors have lives and books don't always show up on time, or publishers randomly, sometimes it feels like change publication dates, all the rest of it.
Oh, yeah.
And
Tell me.
yeah, you know it. And part of the real dissatisfaction this person had was that having placed an order in August for a book to come in November, we didn't charge the customer in August to, like cement the order in and all. And I said, given the totally unstable nature of the whole thing, if we processed orders when we received them, we'd spend our lives doing refunds.
So
I
wait,
mean,
she was complaining that you did not charge her?
yeah, exactly. And
Okay.
and just I'm sure this is a tech person who feels that even if we're a small bookstore, we should behave like Amazon. But I was fascinated with the idea, pointing out that if you buy theater tickets, you have to pay for them, when you buy them and all. But the downside of doing that with people who order books in advance is that you can't guarantee that the books will show up on time, or in fact they'll ever show up. It's just not, it's
You
not
have
like,
to do you have books that are listed for publication that, I get it that the dates change, but that never come out?
Occasionally things are canceled. Yeah. There's a wave going on where, the small paperback is largely being discarded. Two of the major publishers have canceled publishing mass market paperbacks at all. But of course, that information was out there till they made this decision. And, people who ordered them, we can't supply them now. Nobody can. And so I don't think, it's not like Broadway where you can sort of predict that there'll be a play at such and such dates and, people buy tickets. And I mean, I do that all the time, buy tickets for performances and stuff. But I don't think that you can operate that way in the publishing world because there are too many variables. And then you'd be constantly, not constantly, but frequently, you'd have to refund money. And that's a
Okay.
waste of everybody's time. Also costs money to process and then, whatever. So I realized that in a way, an independent bookstore is an anachronism today. That's what it made me, realize is that we are actually running an anachronistic business.
A brick and mortar bookstore,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
even an online bookstore, because people can now just go out and download books, right?
Yeah. Well, we are actually
Or a
an
source.
online bookstore. I mean, we have 25,000 people that, subscribe to our newsletter and 68,000 people in our database or whatever. So, majority of our books, I mean, you're not here. So, all your books, they're all pre-sold except for a little handful by now, are all online orders and, all going to be, except for the ones from local people, all going to be mailed out.
Well,
Um,
clearly you need to order more if they're all sold. Right?
Well, I took my best guess at the time.
Yeah.
We have an event on Friday, and I had to write to the publisher today. I mean, that's the other thing, Kathy, is totally unpredictable. I mean, if we had crystal balls, it would be great. But you can look at past sales, you can look at all kinds of stuff and make a call and you think it's right, and then something happens. Either it bombs and you don't know why, or people suddenly decide that's the only book they want and then you don't have enough. And right now, all the major publishers have asked us what events we want to do next summer from June into September. So if you're working that far ahead,
Right.
the possibility of everything changing around or whatever is huge, right?
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So in an unpredictable world, we are doing the best we can. But I just found also he was the only person out of however many people were involved here that complained. I think everybody else was either not paying attention or just used to it or, figured we'd show up eventually. Who knows? And maybe it's a bad business model, but maybe it's the only one we can actually, maybe it's the only one we can do.
Well, it's working for you, I think.
Yep, 36 years in, it's
There you go.
still going. So I find it fascinating. So are you still practicing any kind of science or are you largely
No,
retired?
no, I'm pretty much retired. I did it for what, 3 decades,
Yeah, no, you did.
and the
And
commute.
I used to marvel at how you produced books and did the TV and then actually worked it, at a job. And I thought, wow, that you had so much energy.
Well, I had 3 kids too.
Yeah, I know. And you traveled a lot. I remember, spending time with you in the UK because your books were actually, I think Deja Dead came out in England before it came out in America, didn't it?
I don't remember
Oh,
that
I'm
far
pretty
that
sure
far.
it did. In Canada too, because after all, that,
Okay. Could
yeah,
be. Could be.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
fascinating. Have you, you've really accomplished so much and so much to be proud of. It's kind of nice to kick back though, isn't it?
But yeah, I'm still writing. I'm working on a short story now. I forget what it's for. It's for something called crimes. This is kind of a funny story because I was asked to, I think by email, to write a short story, 400 words or less, very short story, which I did. And now I've lost the email. I don't know who I wrote it for. I don't know who to send it to.
Oh dear. Well, maybe they will, maybe they will talk to you. It's hard to write short, isn't it?
It is hard to write short.
Yeah, I was asked to do an article for the British Library for an Agatha Christie exhibition they have coming up. And I had a 700 word limit. And I thought, I mean, it would have been easier to write them 2,000 words.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
It's like that line from somebody that said, if I'd had more time, I would have written shorter. And because you just have to keep,
Yeah.
doing that. Some authors seem to have a natural bent for short stories, though. I just marvel at like Jeffrey Deaver, who writes great big books and then tosses out short stories,
Yeah. Yeah. And good ones.
He does. How many have you written?
I don't know. I'd say less than a dozen.
Got it.
Yeah. But it's almost like writing for television. You really have to bring it down and condense it and have one driving central plot. You can't have A stories and B stories and Well, you do that in television. I shouldn't say that, but it really has to be focused, I think, for a
How
short.
much did Bones, the TV show, influence your books, if at all?
I don't know if it did. People have told me that I write like someone who writes for television, or the television people told me it was really easy to adapt my work for television because I write in a, kind of a cut down, no frills, no floofy extras. I'm groping for a word here to describe my style, but it's
Well, I thought
tight. It's tight.
yeah, it is tight. I thought reading Evil Bones that it was perhaps more dialogue driven than some of your other books.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and read.
I felt that it was, and of course that's a natural for for television or for movies because
Maybe that's an impact of writing for television that I'm unaware I've experienced. But
well, I think there was more descriptive writing in the earlier books where you were, because you had to explain what you were doing. It was nobody else was doing what you were doing and,
okay, yeah,
and explaining the science and all. But I felt like this book was, and also, Tempe can be very funny. Um,
thank you. I work on that.
yeah, no, I mean, there was some, but it's very snappy dialogue and she can be, and that is ideal for television. Do you miss Bones? I mean, obviously
I had
reading.
a really good experience. I'm not one of these authors who will say they took my work and they destroyed it. I had a great experience. I loved working with our executive producers. Hart Hansen was fantastic. Barry Josephson. I loved working with Emily Deschanel. She is the nicest, kindest, most generous person on the planet. It was just, I loved working with our writers. We had a classic, I think we had a full-time writing staff of 6 or 7. And so we had a classic writer's room. And I would go in when I would write an episode, I would go into the writer's room. And it's so different from writing a novel because when I'm writing one of my novels, I'm just here by myself at the keyboard. But when you do call what's called breaking the story, for when you're doing a script, you go into the writer's room to break your story and you do it with the other writers. And it's just a brainstorming session. And you go in at first, there's a big whiteboard, which is terrifyingly blank, divided for our show into 6, because our show operated in 6 acts.
Right.
And eventually you would hammer out, you would just throw out ideas and throw out, suggestions. And then eventually you'd end up with an A story, which is your main story, your crime, your B story, which is something going on in the lives of your characters. And then sometimes a C story, which might actually be an arcing story from one episode to another, or even one season to another. So by the end of 2 or 3 weeks breaking the story, you have a pretty good outline. You then have to pitch it, which I never had to do with my novels. You pitch it to the showrunner, and he or she sits there going, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. And then you get notes, they're called, and then you go home and you change. Notes are just suggestions as to changes. So you make all those changes and then you submit it again, and then it has to be approved again, and then you're sent to script, and then you actually write the script, turn it in, and then they change everything. So
Right. Well, you as a scientist, you were collaborative, and so the writers' room probably wasn't as annoying for you as it has proved to be for some writers who, didn't have any kind of collaborative background?
I had a collaborative background. You mean like in faculty meetings and things at university? I started one of my books when Tempe is sitting in a faculty meeting. One of the things you have to do in a continuing series that is really difficult is you have to reintroduce your main character, your main premise, and you have to do it in a new and creative way for readers who are picking that book up as the 5th or 6th or 12th book in the series. But you also have to write it for the person who's never read one of your books. So it's the first time that they're encountering this premise and these characters. So that's a challenge to do that every single time in a new and creative way. One time I had her sitting in a faculty meeting, and she is so bored that she starts writing her own autobiography. So that's how I kind of got that stuff out there without just straight narrative, which can be boring.
Do you think that Bones might get a second life at some point? I mean, somebody, because they keep bringing back, look at Star Trek. I mean, that's my favorite of, of all of those stories. There were just so many of them, and, Gene Roddenberry, the whole bit, but now it's just as alive as it ever was.
In new production or in reruns of old?
No, reruns are reruns. No, I was talking about a new production.
I don't know. We're on air somewhere all the time.
Right.
Everywhere. I think at one point we were in 100 foreign territories, but I don't see us going back into production. I could see maybe a reunion kind of thing,
right?
Episode, a one-off, but Emily and David and Michaela and TJ have all moved on and are doing other things. So I don't see us doing, full seasons of Bones.
No. But sometimes, when a lot of time goes by and those actors are not engaged anymore, it's possible to have new people come along. When an actor becomes so totally identified with the role that you can't imagine anybody else ever being that, that person, that role. Then I think back to Sherlock Holmes and Basil Rathbone, always my favorite. But then I thought Benedict Cumberbatch did a really interesting job. And they updated it, instead of a 3-pipe problem, it became a 3-patch problem because he was trying to quit smoking. And, there are a lot of examples of that, but a show like Bones that was so iconic, maybe at some point, maybe you and I won't even be here to see it. Who knows? But
who knows?
yeah, but I can imagine. Also, the science will keep evolving.
That's true.
So that would be a new thing as well. I mean, over the course of your 30 years, how much did you see in the way of changes in forensic anthropology?
Forensic anthropology, not so much, because we do bones, we do the skeleton.
Right.
Where the big change was DNA. When I started, DNA was not a factor. It didn't exist. Now everything is DNA. There's not a case you don't first take a sample for potential DNA testing. You can't DNA from everything. If a body's been buried or skeletonized, DNA may be completely degraded and useless, but DNA is the big gorilla in the crime lab these days.
I found it interesting that the recent Paris jewel heist, it turned out that the perps, were sloppy with their DNA, and so they left a trail right to their door. So as a crime writer, you have to worry about technology, but it also seems to me that you have to worry about your bad guys coming up with creative ways not to leave DNA.
Of course, yeah, of course. And I think it would be fun to write a book set in the pre-DNA, which is what, like, you'd have to go back to the 80s. I don't think we had DNA in the 80s, did we?
Well, if we did, fingerprint technology was not accepted for a long time after it came along. I'm trying to remember, somebody wrote a series about that a long time ago where the lead detective figured out fingerprint technology and was frustrated that it didn't have any weight in court, or, it was kind of dismissed. And I think DNA was somewhat like that, and the process was so slow.
Right.
It was always kind of a joke that, on television, DNA results would come back in 24 hours, where in the real world it was like, 2 months or something. But now all that has speeded up to the point where it's much more of a tool.
Well, it's not that it takes that long to do the DNA testing. It's queuing. You're waiting your turn
Right.
in line to come up.
Yeah.
Tempe always seems to have an excuse, a persuasive story that she gets bumped to the head of the queue to get her cases done.
But I think you're right. I think it would be really interesting to do, a book. I've seen some very interesting prequels from authors. Charles Finch, who writes a Victorian series, I thought did a brilliant thing. In the middle of it, he went back to write a prequel, and that worked out so well. He wrote a prequel trilogy, and it was really fun for the readers because you knew the characters as you first, as you met them in the
yeah,
regular series, and then you got to see how many things happened and how they became who they were in this long prequel thing, and I found it really enjoyable to read it.
I've thought of that. I've thought of doing not a 3-book series, but a prequel book.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to start a series with a character at a certain time and place with a certain personality and a certain skill set, and then you're stuck with it, and you can evolve it. But I do think so many authors have gone back and written prequels, because um, it's the only way you can kind of catch up to wherever it was you started.
There you go.
Yeah, would be great. So let's call Patrick up and see if there are any questions from
Right, let's do it.
audience, or if Patrick, who's been on this journey with us for a long time, maybe Patrick has questions.
Um, well, there's a question about do your books, I know they're published all over the world and translated into lots of different languages. Are there any specific places around the world that your books are especially popular? Have you noticed?
They're big in Germany. They're big in Italy. They're big in the UK and Ireland, in those areas, mainly in Europe. I really don't know sales figure they're big in Australia. I really don't know sales figures for Asia or Africa. I don't know how well I sell in Africa, but those countries are huge.
Right. Let's see here.
Well, let me ask an additional question. You get author copies, presumably, from many of them. Do you read any of them in other languages? I mean, you obviously must have some French,
Yeah,
but
I can read the French. I can probably work my way through the Spanish. That's it. I don't read Chinese. I don't read Japanese or Russian or Bulgarian but I
so
have a copy of each. I have a library that's full of nothing but foreign copies of my.
right. No, I mean, so you don't, years ago when I was a French student, we read Cyrano de Bergerac in the French, and then we read the English translation and all. And it was so interesting to see it's the idioms that
Right,
that really throw you.
right.
So, it'd be fascinating to see what other languages have done to your books, if in fact you were able to do that. But you're not. I mean, why would you spend time learning
Yeah,
German?
you're
It's just,
really at the mercy of your
yeah.
the translators for your foreign
Is now
editions.
morphing into AI. The whole business of translating, I think, is probably going to suffer the most upheaval in AI because translations are expensive. Um,
Hmm.
that's a thorny area,
Yeah.
very.
Any more questions?
Um, is your son still writing?
He is. He's working on an adult. He did what the viral we did the viral series together, and then he did the Dark Deep series, and he did a Nemesis, Genesis, whatever, Crystallis series, and now I think he's working on an adult book, and he's being very close to the chest with it, so I don't really know anything about it.
Well, that's exciting. Let's see. Here's a question from Sue. She wants to know, do you have a favorite book in the series? And this follow-up question is, which character was the hardest to write?
The hardest to write. Ooh, that's a hard question. I'd have to think back because there have been so many. You mean main core characters or just a one-off character? Or,
She
huh?
didn't elaborate.
Okay. what was the first part of that question? Do I have a favorite
First,
book in the series?
you
I
have a favorite
used to
book?
always say it was Bones to Ashes. I really liked that one quite a bit. Now it's whichever is the one I just finished writing and release, because I can remember more about that one. Some of the early, if you ask me about the plots of early books, I don't.
Um,
I know the main theme, but if you ask me a specific question about a subplot detail, I probably couldn't answer it.
it's probably interesting to go back over the years and see how, technology has changed the game throughout the course of the series.
Yeah, as I said earlier, we don't do a lot of high tech stuff. We use bone saws and we use, drills and X-rays, of course, but we will take samples and send those off to the DNA section or the section that does amino acid analysis or whatever. But as anthropologists, most of us don't do that high tech kind of biochemical thing.
Right, right. So Sue says main characters is what she was referring to. Which of your main characters has been the most challenging?
Let me just say that Skinny Slidell is the most fun. I really do like writing Skinny. And I guess in the same sense, he's the most challenging because I've got to keep him doing things that are annoying. But then in the long run, he's a pretty endearing character. He always comes through at the end. So to create that balance, that's always a challenge.
Okay, here's one from Stefania, who's a Italian, and she says, "What do you feel when you finish writing a book? And how long does it take between the time you finish writing the book to when it is actually published?"
I feel, yay, it's done. I finished it, elated. I don't know what else you would feel. You wouldn't feel depressed. I guess you kind of miss that world that book has taken you into a little bit. And then the time between when you actually turn it in, that has changed over the years. I don't know. The time I turn it in until it actually comes out, it's close to a year, I think. Isn't that right? About a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, generally so.
Yeah.
It's elongated. It can be, they can do what they call crash a book if they really want to. But as I indicated earlier, publishing is working so far ahead now. It's even worse in the garment industry. You can't buy a bathing suit in July, right? Because they're already into the fall wardrobe. And
It's cruise season.
Yeah, so I do find that the time span has expanded and the sense of surprise has diminished. I mean, I can remember way back when we started the store in the 1989 and early 90s, we could open cartons from publishers and be surprised by what was in it, but that's just not true anymore. It's it's really changed in that sense. So
Because you're given lists of upcoming publications, so you know what you're going to be receiving, or
I know at this moment when I have finished the last of the summer event grids, I will know what's coming out through August, or in some cases September, or in one case next November. I'm looking at advanced reading copies of things that publishers send us to look at. Although not as it happened to Evil Bones, which is why I bought it at Barnes and Noble to read it. I have some for August of 2026. I can see them from here. And here's the thing, I don't care. I mean, I'm barely getting through December and, thinking about January. So to make a leap all the way to August, so it becomes really old news by the time you get there. And I find I really miss that surprise of just working a month or two ahead of time. Patrick, do you have that same reaction?
Um, I mean, it's true. It's like they'll upload all the publisher catalogs for, the fall, sometime when, Barbara, in January or
Yeah,
so. But
or
all the
even
summer
December.
catalogs, I mean, I don't know. It's fun to look through them and see what's coming down the line. Uh,
Yeah, it is. But sometimes all the hype about it, I think by the time it gets here, it's like, I don't care. You know,
Well, I'm
it's
sure,
kind of my reaction to much of the time, you know.
Mm.
well, I'm sure Kathy wrote this book quite a while ago now, so I would imagine it's a challenge sometimes to when you're, knee deep in a new manuscript and to go back and talk about a book that you finished a couple of years ago sometimes. Is
Right.
that
Or
is that true?
at least started a couple of years ago, and then you submit it. It takes I don't know how many months to write it, and then you submit it, and then there's a gap, and then it comes back with editorial suggestions, and then you do those or don't do those, depending, and then you submit it again. Usually that's it for me. And then when it goes to print, it comes back. I will have read the thing 5 or 6 times by the time it actually comes out. So you're pretty tired of it by then, even though it's your own book.
Well,
Here's a
and
great
Patrick is right that often at the store in particular, I can see a question coming to an author and they have this deer in the headlights look about them, and I realize that they have absolutely no idea how to answer the question because they've moved on to something else. So that's why all of our events are conversations. It's really, our job to read the book close to the sometimes the day of the event and therefore be able to um, you know, remind the author of what's going on or offer our own insights.
Yeah.
Here's a great question. Robin wants to know, Kathy, do you still get a thrill when you open the first box of your new book?
I do. I mean, there is still it's not like the first time around or even the second or third. It's more now like a satisfaction than a thrill. It's like, yes, there it is. Here's another one. I did it. Yeah,
Do you remember getting the finished copy of Deja Dead?
I do. Yeah.
That must have been exciting.
Yeah, that was exciting. That was my first book, a completely unknown author. Somebody actually wanted to publish it. That was amazing to me. And
It's
then
also must be fun, to see how they present it, package it, whatever. You told the story, but what's the image going to be on the cover? Are
yeah,
people going to say about it and all that? That has to be a really, exciting, possibly frustrating
now, I
experience.
have always yielded to I know there are some authors that are very involved in choosing the cover art. I've always yielded to I figure they know their marketing better than I do.
I
So
think I think that your publisher has done a very good job with your
it's a good
books.
cover. This is one of my favorite covers.
It is. It's great. I love the color combination, but because, Bones has been the repeating theme, it's interesting to figure out what word goes with Bones for
Yes,
this book.
yes,
Um,
yes.
and some authors find that frustrating that, there's a constant word, a branding word. But I think that branding has a lot to do with how successful books can be.
I think the downside is, though, that sometimes I was just went out, and I won't name the author, but it's an author that uses the same kind of thing. Like I use, and I couldn't remember which ones I'd read and which ones I
Yes,
hadn't.
you're right. That
So,
is a downside.
so I ended up not buying anything because I don't want to buy a book I've already read. So
Right.
I don't know.
Well, we keep lists of what customers buy. I mean, our software does that, and it's a fairly frequent thing that they will ask us, have I already bought that book? Because we can look
Yeah,
it up and say yes, it
yeah,
is hard to keep that up. It's also hard when they change the covers, because then sometimes people think it's a brand new book because it doesn't look like
yeah,
the book they remember. And that's kind of a sneaky thing that publishers do. Well, I don't think sneaky is fair. It's a way to keep books current, but it really can confuse
yeah.
readers, Oh, look, maybe I haven't read this one because it doesn't look like whatever it is.
Well, that's a good question about titles too, Kathy. I mean, do you have a working title or is it just Tempe number 23? Um,
It's
eh,
variable. Sometimes I know the title right from the beginning. Sometimes it comes to me midway through writing the story. Sometimes I finish the manuscript and I really have to dig for a title. sometimes when that happens, sometimes the family will have this brainstorming session, will be at dinner and everybody will be throwing out. I remember one year, I forget which, oh, it was the book that starts out in the basement of a pizza parlor.
Oh, right.
Doesn't
In
matter,
Montreal, right?
which one?
In Montreal. I mean,
Yeah, she starts out, she's in the basement. So I remember my daughter Courtney suggested bony pepperoni for that one. We didn't go with that.
So, well, don't you think Evil Bones was a natural, though, given the fact that that was the thing that interested you and the reading that you did?
Yeah, that one was with me right from pretty early on.
Yeah.
And the publisher liked it. My editor liked it. So, if
Do you
she
have, do you have lists of potential titles?
I
You
don't.
must. No?
I don't know.
Really?
No, I don't. Somewhere along the way, I might start jotting things down, just some ideas, and stick them in a folder or stick them in a file. But
Well, I know John Sanford has, obviously has that same issue. And
Please don't bring him up. I live in fear that one day I'm going to get an arc from Putnam and it's going to be called Final Bones. I'm Final Prey, because John said to me that that is, in fact, the title of the last book he's going to write. Prey series. So every year I blink when I get the notice and I think, please don't say Final Prey.
He says that every year, though.
I know. There are authors who stop writing. This has nothing to do with you, Kathy, but in general, I find it hard. I find that writers often find it hard to just stop. But sometimes life intervenes or whatever it might be. But with John, what I find fascinating is that his last two books have been possibly the best and most original narrative structures and plots that he's ever written, in the face of him saying, well, next one's going to be Final Bones. I really find that that's so interesting that it's like he's more creative, under this umbrella or rubric or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think all of his books have been great, but the last two have been so inventive. So it's like a later burst of creativity. Maybe looking at, Final Prey has encouraged him to take some risks or do something different. I don't know.
Well, he clearly loves it, and he's such an avid reader. He's always reading everything. What are some of your favorite writers, Kathy? Do you read much in your genre? Or?
I do, but I read all over the map. I don't just read mysteries and thrillers. What am I reading currently? What have I got sitting here? My Friends by Frederick Beckman, The Good Liar by Denise Minna, The Bone Hacker by Kathy Reichs. I don't know why those books are stacked there, but those are waiting in my to be read pile. What am I reading currently? I'm reading Theo of Golden.
Golden, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your publisher Scribner does some really wonderful books all over the place. They've always had a remarkably high profile, do literary fiction as well as crime, and very good nonfiction. So, that gives you a whole range of books to get.
Yep.
Yep.
I read a lot of books that are sent to me, people that want comments or blurbs. So I don't want to do that unless I've actually read the work.
Yes, good point. Well, Patrick, is there anything else, or should we wrap this up?
I think that's about it. People have been weighing in about the topic earlier in the conversation when you're talking about, animal cruelty and things like that. And that sparked a really interesting exchange in the comments field.
Great.
Well, I hope this book triggers or encourages a movement for more protective animal laws and regulations. And
as I said, I realized the other day that in my annual giving, I have way upped my donation to shelters and rescue operations. There's a very good one that actually flies dogs scheduled for euthanasia in one shelter to a different one that is less crowded, where they're not just randomly killed. So maybe in a sense, since the world is such a mess at the moment, the fact that you can do some good for some small portion of it is a very appealing thing. You know, I really,
One of my favorites that you might like being an attorney is the Animal Legal Defense Fund.
yeah.
I
No, I agree. I think that's a very good one.
yeah.
And I've been interested that there's a couple of airlines, at least one, that have started, what they do is they just transport dogs. It's not a euthanasia shelter issue. It's people who want to travel with their dogs that are relocating, and
Okay.
you don't have to put the dog in a cage in the baggage department now. They can have
Okay.
their own seat. And yeah, so I do think there are two different strains going on. In some cases, more cruelty, or just it's people's ability to care for their animals as pets, if their income is dropping or the pet is sick or something. That seems to be a thing, sending animals to shelters a lot. So I think about that. You know, during COVID, that was a huge problem, is that people couldn't care for their animals. So
Mm.
yeah. Anyway, before we just go totally off the rails here, thank you very much it's wonderful to see you again. I always look forward to
You.
conversations. And thank you again for signing our books today and shipping them off. And they should be in, if not the end of this week, very early next week, so we can reship them in time for Christmas. And we only have a handful left. So if you're interested, I recommend that you go ahead and place your order now. So good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Good night, Kathy. Thank you
Good
again.
night. Good night, Patrick. Thank you.